Welcome to Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. This day with the podcast brought to you by ConversCountyTourism.com. Beautiful landscapes, historic sites, and unique downtowns await visitors to Douglas and Glen Rock, Wyoming. Plan your visit at ConversCountyTourism.com. Well, we're going to see the system that brought a wide variety of weather yesterday to the region clearing out. We have the next frontal system coming in as we get on into the Wednesday, Thursday time frame. But yesterday, as you'll see in a moment, we had heavy rain. We had some strong thunderstorms. We had some areas of windy conditions. And as you'll see in a minute, a little taste of winter in a few areas. Now, the trough is going to continue to head east. Dry air is going to come in behind it. So for today and Wednesday, pretty quiet weather across the western half of the U.S. But this next system will come in from the Pacific Northwest and go right along the Canadian-U.S. border. So that system is really going to affect those folks up in the northern areas the most. But there'll be some wind and some cooler temperatures with the system as it moves through. Monsoonal moisture is really getting suppressed south now. This front that just came through is pushing it. The next front coming in midweek is going to push it south. And as we have been mentioning over the last week or so, it's the beginning of the end. Not over yet, but the monsoonal pattern is definitely going to be tapering off. All indications suggest we could have a pretty good Labor Day weekend. Pretty good meaning for those of you that want good weather for camping, fishing, doing all of those things that folks like to do during that weekend. Yes, this is not from the archive. This is Togety Pass, Wyoming, over the Wind River Mountains in the north end on the way from between Du Bois and on the way to the Grand Teton National Park, Yellowstone area. This roadway goes up pretty high, and with that trough overhead yesterday morning, snow came down to beat the band there for a while, accumulated over an inch before melting off later in the day. And there's a great shot from Dan Griffin in Driggs, Idaho, on the west side of the Tetons. You can see snow levels were up pretty high, as you could expect in late August. Does this mean summer's over? No. We've got plenty of summer weather. Is it unusual for late August snows to happen in the mountains? No. You just are into this time of year where things start to change, subtle at first, bigger changes come later. It's just a hint, not a trend, when we take a look at the long-term weather patterns across the region. So we had snow in the mountains. We had thunderstorms developing out on the plains and quite a bit of thunderstorm activity in some areas out ahead of the cold front. And some areas in northeastern Wyoming, like here near Gillette, there was the line of thunderstorms that did bring rain to parts of north central and northeastern Wyoming and southern Montana, especially that Remington fire area. Hopefully that's going to help because the prospects for rain are going to be limited to places like this down in New Mexico, closer to the monsoonal moisture, where that moisture is going to hang around a little bit longer. But even there, the thunderstorms are going to start to become a little less numerous. And the satellite imagery will really tell you why. Here's the trough that came through yesterday, pushing out into the upper Midwest. There'll be plenty of severe weather and strong thunderstorms up here in the northern Great Lakes and into the northern and northwest Corn Belt. But you can see very little here in the west. Here's the next low coming in off the Pacific Northwest coast. But in between, well, there's the wedge of dryness that you get between systems. And then you can see the nice swirl with this low here. Now, this last system took a route more like this. This next system is going to take a route more like that, further to the north. This is where we're going to be by noon today. Yesterday's low exits. It weakens against this high. But then here comes the next trough coming on in. And as it goes along the U.S.-Canadian border, this is by Thursday morning, it will bring much cooler weather and wet weather to Saskatchewan and Manitoba, northern areas of Montana, North Dakota, south of the low. As we mentioned yesterday, when the low goes to your north, you're going to get windy here. So this is a concern with the fires. Although the weather has been better for the fires over the last couple of days, it gets a little worse because the winds pick up. Thankfully, not for too long, but tomorrow in particular, it's going to be windy in the wind-prone areas of Wyoming and parts of the northern and central Rockies as that low goes across the U.S.-Canadian border and heads east. But this high pressure ridge will build up behind it just in time for the weekend. Now, I want to do a little basic meteorology here and talk about air masses, because this is something that is sometimes lost in our current state of technology and all of our fancy weather computer models. Sometimes you just got to go back to the basics to understand what's happening with the weather. And you'll get this in meteorology or geography 101, where the air masses across the globe, where they come from and where air masses come from, because when the weather changes, you're really changing air masses. You're changing where the weather has been. So the weather you're experiencing is weather that happened somewhere else upstream. And understanding where those air masses come from give you a good idea of what's going on. So anytime you see a T, maritime, tropical, continental, tropical, T means tropical, P means polar. So what we're going to see over the course of the next week, this is a really good lesson because we talk about the monsoon kind of being on its last legs, so to speak. So in the summer months, the maritime tropical, the continental tropical will bulge up northward and give us those thunderstorms that we see throughout the course of the season across the lower 48 states, and occasionally getting farther north up into Canada, because the maritime tropical, the southern latitudes here dominate, the air masses dominate, because the jet stream during the course of the summer is up here. So these air masses have more ability to come north. But as you get to the end of summer and into the beginning of fall, these maritime polar and the continental polar, especially the continental polar air masses, start to come on in. This air mass right here is what's punching in behind the system that just came through yesterday. So ahead of it, it's moist, but behind it, the air up here, think of the tundra of northwest Canada. It's not a normally very moist place. So you're replacing the maritime and the continental tropical with continental polar, which is much drier, much more moist air here. And what will happen through the course of the late summer and early fall, the jet stream starts to wander more south, and we start to have these air masses more than these air masses. And you'll really see that in the water vapor loop as we showed you, but also the precipitable water going forward. These are the temperature anomalies Thursday behind that trough. So not terribly cold relative to average, but another cool down as that system goes along the U.S.-Canadian border. We talked about the wind. It is going to get windy. So Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, parts of South Dakota, southern Canada here, a lot of this wind happens tomorrow. It does back off by Thursday into Friday in the upcoming weekend, but there is going to be some windy periods there we've got to get through. Look at the precipitation totals through Saturday morning. So you can see wet up here with that next low, but we're seeing that replacement of air masses. The maritime tropical, the continental tropical air is now down here. Behind all of this moisture here will be the continental polar air coming on in. And by the weekend, that high pressure begins to build and expand a little bit. And what will happen is, as it expands, well, this moisture starts to have an ability to come back to the north again. So this time of year, it's kind of a battle between Canada air and air coming up from the lower latitudes. This is by Monday that high pressure is in place. When we look at the precipitable water forecast, you can see the red and the brown representing the dry air, the green and the blue where the air is really moist. So you can see, if you look closely, you can see what's going on with these air masses and how they move across the region and how things ended up where they're getting placed. If you notice, right at the tail end, this part starts to get white and green again after being brown, because that high pressure ridge this weekend expands northward. Hence, what will happen is, after some drier weather, some of that moisture has a chance to come back north, but not at the levels that we would see in the middle part of summer. And hence, when we look at the thunderstorm pattern, Friday through Monday, so what I'm doing is giving you a sneak peek here into the 4-day period of Friday through Monday, because I know a lot of you are going to sneak out on Friday. Who wouldn't, right? So here's the thunderstorm forecast for Friday. So notice how there is a lack of thunderstorm activity here, But here's the thunderstorm activity where that subtropical moisture is going to be. What you want to watch as we step forward is the high pressure ridge comes in. This moisture starts to march northward again a little bit as the high expands. Hence the battle of air masses when you get into late summer and into early fall. So this is Friday. Saturday, still a lot of suppression. So Friday and Saturday, the thunderstorms are going to remain south. By the time we get into Sunday, though, if you're going to be in this region right here, you're going to start, there's some thunderstorm activity again. Not a lot, but some, especially up in the mountains. And this is for Labor Day Monday. Now, for those of you that have been watching throughout the summer, when I show you these thunderstorm prediction maps here, you can see that it's not nearly as thick or as widespread. When we look at the temperature readings, with that high pressure expanding, it's going to be warm. So I know I showed you a picture of snow, but that's just something that happens late summer as we get into early fall. We're going to go right back to some warm high pressure and what should be, as it stands right now, a pretty good looking Labor Day weekend. We'll keep you informed, and if we see any changes in that Labor Day weekend forecast, we'll let you know. Have yourself a good Tuesday.